Hey there, lovely soul. Welcome back to Noah's Stories. Have you ever loved someone so deeply that the thought of losing them feels unbearable? Today's story is a quiet, beautiful reminder that even in the darkest moments, healing can find us, often through the most unexpected people. Let's begin. Morning sunlight filtered through the trees, gently touching the porch lined with blooming bougainvillea. Birds chirped cheerfully on the rooftop as a soft breeze brushed against spotless glass windows. In a quiet little villa nestled in the suburbs, life moved like a gentle melody. Ethan, a gifted architect, always started his day with a warm cup of coffee, watching his wife Lily bustling in the kitchen and his little daughter Sophie darting around with laughter. To him, it wasn't just happiness, it was everything. Lily was the sunlight of their home, always smiling, always tender, and Sophie was the laughter, the little spark of joy. Ethan used to believe that nothing in this world could take his family away from him. But fate always arrives when we least expect it. It was a warm afternoon after a light rain. The streets still glistened with puddles scattered like broken mirrors, reflecting the soft sunlight. Lily, just off work, hurried to pick Sophie up from preschool, something she did every day with the same unshakable joy. Sophie, only 4 years old, ran into her mother's arms, giggling like wind chimes. Lily scooped her up, kissed her soft curls, and the two waved cheerfully at her teacher before heading to the car. No one knew it would be the last time Lily's smile lit up the world. On the drive home, a large truck lost control on a slippery curve. The screech of brakes pierced the air, followed by the crunch of metal shattering glass and the screams of nearby witnesses. Lily's car was struck from the side, rolling over and over before landing in stillness. By the time help arrived, Lily wasn't moving. She had passed away on the spot. But in the back seat, amid shattered glass and twisted seats, Sophie was still alive, trembling, bleeding from a cut on her forehead, clutching her teddy bear and crying without sound. From that moment on, the light in that home was gone, taking with it the laughter, the joy, and the heart of a father. Ethan arrived at the hospital in a panic. The moment he saw Lily's lifeless body, he collapsed, as if the entire world had fallen apart. He held her close, trembling, tears pouring down his face. "Why did you leave me? You promised we'd grow old together," he whispered through broken sobs. From that day forward, the villa became hauntingly silent. No more laughter in the kitchen, no tiny footsteps on the wooden floor, no soft morning music, only a heavy, lingering quiet that wrapped around every wall. Ethan stopped going to work. He didn't shave, he barely ate. Each day, he sat alone in the living room, in Lily's favorite chair, staring at a framed family photo on the shelf. Lily was still everywhere. Her clothes still hung in the closet. Her shoes waited by the door. Ethan couldn't let go. Every morning he woke, hoping it had all been a bad dream. And Sophie, she drifted through the house like a ghost. She didn't speak, she didn't play, she didn't cry, not in front of anyone. Only at night, in restless sleep, she whispered, "Mommy," barely louder than a breath. The grief in that house had no sound, but it was eating everything away, day by day, hour by hour. 2 years passed, but grief still clung to the villa like an old, stubborn fog. Ethan moved through life like a shadow. Sophie still wouldn't speak or smile. No matter how bright the spring sun or how golden the summer grass, inside the house, it was winter all year long. Grandma Rose, Ethan's mother, left her quiet village to stay with her son. Though her back ached and her hands trembled, she rose early every morning to cook, clean, and try to keep the household from completely falling apart. But her strength was wearing thin. One afternoon at the market, as she struggled to lift a sack of rice into her car, her knees nearly buckled. "Ma'am, let me help you," came a gentle voice. She turned and saw a young woman, slim, worn clothes, tired eyes, but a bright and respectful gaze. Her name was Mia. Orphaned young, she'd grown up in a group home, later adopted, then abandoned again once her adoptive family had children of their own. Since then, she had done whatever work she could to survive, carrying loads, washing dishes, sleeping wherever there was shelter. Grandma Rose looked at Mia and saw a flicker of hope among the ruins. "Would you like to come work at my house? Help with the cleaning, the housework? You'll have a place to stay." Tears welled up in Mia's eyes as she nodded gratefully. Grandma Rose didn't know if this was the answer, but a mother's heart whispered, "It's time to bring something new home." The next morning, just as the sun began to rise, Mia stood at the mansion gate with a worn cloth bag in hand. She wore her neatest dress, hair combed back, her face washed clean, though her eyes still carried traces of fatigue. When the gate opened, Grandma Rose gave her a gentle hug. "Welcome to your new home," she said. Mia stepped into the shaded courtyard, marveling at the quiet beauty of the place, but as she entered the house, she immediately sensed something heavy in the air, like grief soaked deep into every brick. That evening, Grandma Rose called Mia into the kitchen, her voice soft but serious. "You're a good girl, Mia, but my son Ethan hasn't been himself since Lily died. He lives like a shadow, always angry, always silent. You must be very patient. Work hard, ask no questions, don't touch anything unless you're told, and most importantly, never touch Lily's photo." Mia nodded respectfully. She knew she had walked into a house that was broken. The next day, Grandma Rose said goodbye, returning to the village to care for Grandpa Ben. Before leaving, she hugged Mia and said, "Keep the house in order and be kind to them, even if they can't be kind to you yet." As the car disappeared past the gate, silence reclaimed the mansion. Mia began her tasks, mopping floors, tidying rooms, washing laundry. Everything was spotless, yet the house still felt cold, as if no one truly lived there. That afternoon, while dusting a photo frame near the piano, Mia paused, staring at Lily's gentle smile. "She must have been a wonderful woman," Mia whispered. "What do you think you're doing?" a man's voice boomed from the stairs. Ethan stood there, eyes like fire. "Don't ever touch that photo again. That's my wife, not some decoration for you to clean." Mia lowered her head, heart pounding. "I'm sorry, sir," she whispered. But Ethan had already turned away, leaving only the chill of his grief behind. That night, Mia carried a tray of food up to Sophie's room. She knocked gently on the door. No answer. She tried again. "Sophie, it's Mia. I brought you dinner." Still silence. Mia slowly opened the door. The room was dim, the curtains tightly drawn. Sophie sat curled in the corner of her bed, clutching her teddy bear, her empty gaze fixed on nothing. Mia walked quietly to her, kneeling beside her. "You don't have to say anything if you're not ready, but I'll be here," she said softly. She placed the food tray on the bed and tried to smile. "I made carrot soup, your favorite." Sophie didn't look. A second later, she suddenly pushed the tray off the bed. The bowl shattered, soup spilling across the carpet. Mia gasped, but she didn't yell. She simply bent down, picked up each piece of broken bowl, and wiped the spill. "It's okay, I'll clean this. I'll bring dinner again tomorrow. I won't give up." That night, when the house was quiet, Mia returned, with a little stool and an old storybook. She sat beside Sophie's bed and asked gently, "May I tell you a story?" Sophie didn't respond, but she didn't turn away either. So Mia began, her voice warm, gentle, slow. She told a tale about a little girl named Amira, who had no friends until a butterfly landed on her shoulder and changed everything. Mia used her hands, changed voices, even made silly sounds to make Sophie smile. Sophie didn't laugh, but she didn't look away. The next night, Mia returned, and the night after that, she told stories of singing lions, little birds who couldn't fly but still became queens of the sky. After each one, she softly sang lullabies, tunes she remembered from the orphanage. She didn't know that just beyond the cracked doorway, Ethan had started standing there, silently listening. The full moon cast its gentle glow through the window, lighting the small room where Sophie lay silent, hugging her teddy bear. Tonight, Mia didn't bring a book. She sat on the little stool, looking at Sophie with soft, kind eyes. "Tonight," she said quietly, "I want to tell you a different story, not a fairy tale, my story." Slowly, Sophie turned her head, eyes wide, listening in silence. "I don't know who my parents are," Mia began, her voice trembling slightly. "When I was a baby, I was left at the steps of an orphanage. No name, no note. The name Mia was given to me by a kind woman who worked there. She spoke of life in the orphanage, the cold nights, the hunger, the joy of sharing toys with other children. Then she was adopted by a couple. She hoped for a real home, but when they had children of their own, everything changed. They threw her out like she had never mattered. I slept in markets, worked just to eat, until I met Grandma Rose." Sophie blinked rapidly. She didn't cry, until Mia whispered, "But you, Sophie, you had a mommy who hugged you, who told you stories. You have a daddy, you have grandparents, you are not alone." Sophie suddenly sat up, lips quivering. Then, without a word, she threw her tiny arms around Mia, tears streaming like a long-held storm finally breaking. "I miss my mommy," she choked, her voice, after 2 years, finally breaking the silence. Outside the door, Ethan stood frozen, his heart clenched and then softened in a way it hadn't in years. His daughter had finally spoken. Ever since Sophie spoke again, the mansion felt warm for the first time in years. Laughter began to replace the silence. Every morning, Sophie rushed into the kitchen to hug Mia tightly. At night, she refused to sleep unless Mia told her a story. Ethan watched quietly from a distance, offering silent gratitude, and, occasionally, the corner of his mouth lifted into a smile. They were small smiles, fleeting, but they were the first cracks in the wall he had built around himself for 2 years. Mia never tried to force joy. She simply cared for Sophie, kept the house gentle, and was quietly present, as if she had always belonged. One day, Ethan caught Mia placing a bright red maple branch into an old vase that once belonged to Lily. He nearly scolded her, but stopped. The way she handled the vase, with such reverence, the way she placed it like honoring a memory, not replacing it, it stirred something in him. From that moment, Ethan began to notice more. The soft giggles Sophie shared with Mia, the gentle way Mia untangled his daughter's messy hair, the tenderness in her eyes that looked like a mother's. That afternoon, maple leaves danced across the backyard. Sophie sat beneath the tall tree, crayons scattered, tongue peeking out as she drew. When Mia stepped outside with a towel in hand, Sophie quickly hid her paper. "Mia!" she called out. Mia bent down, smiling. "What is it, princess?" Sophie held out the drawing. "Look, I drew our family. 3 stick figures. One tall, one small, one with long hair. Underneath, she had written, Daddy, me, Mia. Around them, a bright red heart." Before Mia could speak, Sophie asked softly, "Will you marry my daddy?" Mia froze. "What?" she whispered. At that moment, Ethan stepped onto the porch to take a phone call, but stopped, hearing the question. "I want you to be my mommy," Sophie said. "You make Daddy smile again. You make me feel safe. You two fit, like puzzle pieces." Ethan walked over, gently taking the drawing from his daughter's hands. He stared at the names, the heart, the hope etched by a child's love. Sophie looked up and whispered, "I just want a family one more time." Ethan didn't say a word. He simply knelt beside her, pulled her close, and held her tight, as if he was holding the last missing piece of his soul. A few days later, Ethan came home earlier than usual. He stepped into the kitchen, where Mia was quietly washing dishes. "Mia," he said softly, his voice deep but gentle. She turned, slightly startled. "Yes, sir?" "Get ready, please. The 3 of us are going out tonight." "Out? Really?" Mia asked, surprised. Ethan smiled with a hint of mystery. "It's a special evening." That night, Mia walked down the stairs in a soft, pale blue dress Grandma Rose had once given her. Her hair was neatly pinned, a few curls falling gently around her cheeks. When Ethan saw her, he froze for a second. "You look beautiful," he said, quietly. Mia blushed. "Thank you." "No more sir," he smiled. "Just call me Ethan." Sophie squealed. "Where are we going? Will there be ice cream?" The three of them arrived at a cozy garden restaurant filled with twinkling lights. A table had been reserved just for them, complete with Sophie's favorite mango juice. They laughed, played napkin games, and shared silly stories under the golden glow of lanterns. But when dessert was served, Ethan stood up and knelt beside Mia. Mia's eyes widened, and Sophie shouted, "Daddy, propose!" Ethan took Mia's hand, his gaze deep and sincere. "Mia, you came into our lives like a miracle. You healed my daughter's heart, and mine too. I never thought I could smile again. Not truly, until I saw Sophie laugh because of you. I know you've been through pain, but if you'll let me, I want to give you a new life, a real family, a home that will never leave you behind again." He opened a small velvet box. Inside was a simple, elegant ring. "Mia, will you marry me?" 1 month later, the once silent, cold villa bloomed in white and gold. Bougainvillea spilled over the porch. Soft music floated in the morning sun. Mia stood beside Ethan, hand in hand, with little Sophie between them as the sweetest flower girl. All eyes were on them as the priest read the vows. Ethan slipped the ring onto Mia's finger and kissed her softly, to the cheer of the guests. Sophie shouted, "Daddy, kiss her again!" making everyone laugh. Grandma Rose wiped her tears. Grandpa Ben held her hand tightly. They looked at their son, once shattered, now whole again, and more. The next day, Sophie wore her crisp new school uniform, her hair neatly tied, one hand tightly holding Mia's. "Nervous?" Mia asked. Sophie nodded. "Yes, but excited. I want to tell my friends everything." Ethan stood by the car, smiling. "My little princess is growing up." As Sophie walked into school, Mia stood at the gate, pride shimmering in her eyes. Ethan came beside her and whispered, "Thank you for believing and staying." That afternoon, Mia sat under the maple tree in the yard, watching Sophie draw with white chalk on the pavement. Sophie pulled out her crayons again and carefully drew one more figure above the heart. A woman with long flowing hair, soft white wings, and a gentle smile. "That's Mommy," Sophie whispered as Mia sat beside her. "She's not here anymore, but she's watching us from the sky." Mia wrapped her arms around the little girl, tears quietly falling. Ethan walked over, knelt beside them, and looked at the drawing. He gently nodded. On that paper now was a complete family, whole and full of love, even if one heart lived in heaven. The house that once fell apart no longer echoed with silence. It held laughter, love, and a light that would never fade. And on the paper Sophie held tight, the sunlight touched the wings of her angel mother. A quiet reminder that love, once true, never really leaves. If this story touched your heart even just a little, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Noah's Stories. Sometimes all it takes is one act of kindness, one voice, or one little drawing to bring a broken family back to life. What did you feel when Sophie drew her angel mom? Let me know in the comments below. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Until next time, stay kind, stay open, and stay close to the light.